is something which we'll have our eye out on, just off the day's low. There you go on the Nifty mid cap. But let's quickly call on board our first management. Today we have three. Let's call on board the first one. We have Keshav Bhajanka, who's the Executive Director at CenturyPly Boards India. Welcome on board, Mr. Bhajanka. Just want to first off try and understand how top line is evolved in terms of volume versus value.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I think we have had a very strong quarter in a highly muted demand environment. If you look at our plywood segment, YOY, our volume should be up by close to 14-15%, and our value would also be slightly higher, markedly. Our realization would be up by about 1.5% further. If you look at MDF, we have faced some pressure in terms of realization due to an extremely competitive demand environment. However, having said that, we have still clocked in 25% value growth on account of 40% plus volume growth. Laminates have been more or less flattish, but across our segments, we have been within threshold limits of our margin guidance. So I think overall, it has been a good quarter.
Bhajanka, good morning and thank you so much for joining us today. Just wanted to get started with, one of the major segments, which is MDF. Now, if you could just quantify what was the volume growth in this particular segment in this quarter, and how has quarter two also started for, as the raw material price on that. But from MDF specifically, how are you seeing this particular quarter as well? Because EBIT margins are down roughly 90% for MDF specifically. So if you could just talk to us about this segment.
So in MDF, I think we should take the figures with a slight bit of a caveat. When we are looking at margin figures, I would advise to look at the standalone figures, because we have a new unit that has just commissioned. It was commissioned on the 27th of March. So as you know, in the first quarter, a large new unit is not going to be able to ramp up that quickly. However, we were close to 14% EBITDA margins in quarter one. For our standalone unit. Overall, our volume growth has been 25%. Our value growth has been 25% plus, and this has been driven by a 40% plus volume growth. Going forward, we look at a stronger volume and value growth for the remaining quarters as we scale up our new unit in Andhra Pradesh.
Right. Mr. Bhajanka, so you've guided for an overall growth of 40% in MDF, and you've also guided for that 15% margin mark for the MDF segment specifically. So will you stick to that, or there's an upside to that going forward?
I think if we look at on a steady state basis, we will be at 15% plus EBITDA margins in MDF, and we will be at 40% growth. Like I've mentioned before, because the new unit has come into play and the new unit is gradually ramping up, I think we are going to see some short-term hits, but overall 15% EBITDA margin and 40% growth looks achievable.
Right. And Mr. Bhajanka, raw material prices of timber have overall gone up. So I want to understand how is the quarter two been so far, and what is the outlook for timber prices then?
I think timber prices will continue to remain inflated. This is a demand and supply mismatch, and as you know, plantation timber has its own cycle, so it will not be corrected in a day or a month. Having said that, in our plywood segment, we have taken a further price increase. We took a price increase last quarter, and we are taking a further price increase in the current quarter. So that will help us negate the impact of higher timber prices. In MDF, margins will continue to be under pressure, hence the guidance of 15% versus a 20% plus EBITDA margin of last year.
Now, Mr. Bhajanka, we had that a one-time impact in this particular quarter as well, which was about 13 odd crores. Now, we saw a similar impact of 19 crores in Q4 as well. And this is largely related to, subsidiaries being disposed of or assets being written down. If you could just talk us through that, and we've certainly seen some action in a lot of geography. So is this the last particular quarter where you see this particular one-off impact of disposing of, or are there any other subsidiaries that would require this action in this particular year?
So I'd just like to clarify, this is actually related to the last quarter itself. However, what happened is the transaction got completed in the current quarter. As such, this is a book impact that we had to take in this quarter. It has zero impact on our cash flows, and the transaction is now already complete. It was supposed to be completed in March, but the transaction actually got completed in the first half of April. So this is a book impact that we had to take on account of the transaction being completed in April of this year.
So we are beyond the one-offs.
Yes, very much so.
Understood. With regard to expansion plans, what's in the pipeline? How much investment? Could you just quickly give us a lowdown?
So I think the majority of our capex is already done. As you know, we have commissioned our Andhra Pradesh unit, which is the largest unit in the history of our company. Now, there are only two substantial investments that are going to take place. A new plywood unit, which we are still contemplating in terms of which is the best location. That is going to be a capex of anywhere between 100 to 150 crores. And our particle board unit, where a substantial part of the capex is already done. And we are looking to commission that unit by Q4 of the current year. I think that will be a capex of 550 crores.
Not just Mr. Bhajanka, if you could just deep dive a little bit into the particle board segment. We've seen, this quarter slightly subdued revenue growth, but the kind of capex investments that you've done, you're very positive on this particular space. If you could just talk us through a little bit of a long term over the next couple of years, how are you seeing this particular segment, pan out over the next couple of years specifically for you as well as for the industry? What is the kind of opportunity that you're seeing?
So there is tremendous competitive pressure in particle board, and hence we have gone for the new investment. The new unit that we are setting up is a continuous line. It is a different technology to the one that we currently have, which is a multi-delight press system. This is now going to be in line with the technology that we already have for MDF. So this will have a substantial increase in our EBITDA margins. Continuous press is far more expensive than multi-delight press. The reason behind the same is that it offers large-scale savings in terms of raw material consumption. So overall, once the new unit comes into play, we will be far more competitive and we will be able to drive a far better EBITDA margin. And that is the thought process behind setting up such a large capex. Alongside that, the market for particle board is substantially large and the market is growing. So I think we are well poised in that segment. And once the new line comes, we're going to be in a good position to ramp up.
Got it. And Mr. Bhajanka, you had taken price hikes of roughly 2% in May. So I want to understand going forward, are you planning to take further price hikes? Because, this will define the competition for you overall and also the impact of that price hikes on your numbers.
So you're correct. We took a 2% price hike in plywood segment in the month of June. And yes, we are going to take a further price hike in the current quarter. And I think we have still been able to post strong revenue numbers, strong volume growth numbers, despite the price hike. And I see that trend continuing.
Right, Mr. Bhajanka. Mr. Bhajanka, generally for a plyboard driven or the like kind of company, demand picks up maybe a year or two after pre-sales of real estate has happened, because you'll start to see those converting into projects, tangible projects, and thereafter, most residents will start doing interiors. Do you expect a real push going forward in terms of demand happening?
You are absolutely right. For a product like plywood or MDF or laminates or particle board, all the segments we are in, the product actually comes into play when it goes from a house to a home, when someone starts doing up their interiors. And I think we are seeing early signs that the inventory that was purchased is now being handed over. And hopefully the medium term is going to be very strong for us.
Got it. Well, Mr. Bhajanka, thank you so much for taking our time and speaking with us at ndtv-profit.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Let's shift focus to a new